Welcome to the podcast. It starts with you, with me, Vic O'Farrell. I ask my guests, by understanding their own behaviours and personality style, what impact on their lives, both personally and professionally, has there been? What is it like to live and work with someone of your style? I mean, this is not about labelling people, putting people in boxes, or an excuse for bad behaviour. It's about recognising, understanding and respecting that we're all different. And what impact can you have on others by looking in the mirror? Because it starts with you. And here we are on another episode of It Starts With You. Today I am beautifully excited, because I'm going to use that word, to be joined here with Fiona Brennan Scott, who, listeners, I'm not even hiding it from Fiona because she knows, I have a bit of a crush on Fiona's voice. I just love it. There's something about your voice, Fiona, that I just love listening to. And so rather than me introduce you to our viewers and our listeners, would you like to let everybody know who it is, what you do? And when you get to the end of that, tell us about your personality in terms of how you would describe Fiona Brennan Scott.
Oh, you might have to ask me that in two parts because one of the things I am is a menopausal woman. So asking me two questions is probably not going to produce a very successful outcome.
Well, let's start with who you are.
Right. So I am a voice and speech coach, and I've built that on learning to become a speech and drama teacher when I was 29 to 31, opening studios in South Africa and in the UK, in the south of England. And yes, I helped young people, children, teenagers, preteens, and adults to find their voice, to step up, to speak out. And I always ran my speech and drama studio as a life skill space, not to become a famous actor on stage or screen. It was always about building confidence, having fun, playing, especially for adults. And then 8 years ago, I pivoted and specialized in business people. They were always coming to me because they saw what I did, but I wanted to specialize in them because actually my own children were going off to university and I felt like I'd served my time with that generation. So I loved it while it was happening, but now I really love helping people in leadership, generally in STEM, to empower them and enable them to hold an audience through tools and techniques so that they're fully engaged and fully connected. That is my joy.
Yeah, about finding your voice that we all have within us. So if you had to describe yourself in terms of personality styles, which tool would you say that you've used and that you could describe yourself?
I've used several. My favorite, if I'm honest, is the Enneagram.
Hmm.
And I didn't like it initially. So I worked with you. You've probably met Graham Codrington, who's a member of the PSA in South Africa. He was using it as part of his business, and someone he'd taken on to work with him was a friend of mine, and she wanted to practice on me. And I came out as a type 4, which is a need to be unique. And I went, I'm not a need to be unique. I am unique. Which kind of proved that I was a type 4. And I like it because there's 9 different profiles. It's the least boxy, and you also have wings where you've got a leaning towards two other options in various circumstances. So I found that really, really helpful.
Hmm.
Most of all, actually, weirdly, if I may be weird on your podcast,
You may.
because I read that type fours have got a kind of an unnatural interest or fascination with death. And I thought everybody was like that. So I'm very comfortable talking, and I thought it was an Irish thing as well. I'm very comfortable talking about death and loss and grief. And apparently James Dean and Marilyn Monroe and lots of people who died prematurely were. But here I am, I'm still standing, but and happy to talk about death. Mm.
Um, Well, I won't take the podcast down that road. There is one I did previously with Reverend Kerry Jane Evans. If you want to understand about have a little conversation about death, but just picking up on what you said there, the fact that you said, "But I thought everyone was like that." And that is our natural assumption, put my teeth back in today, when it comes to behaviours, is that our natural instinct is to assume everyone is like ourselves. And as we know, they're not. So, how do you help people get the confidence to speak? Because if we have a voice, surely everyone's confident to use it, are they not?
Well, the first thing I'd like to say is that I have two definitions of voice. There's voice with a small v, which is what's in your throat, what's produced in the vocal cords, and four other resonators while I'm at it. And that is the voice, technically speaking. But then there's voice with a capital V, that is your identity.
Hmm.
So if you think about it, when we speak, unless we're reading or reciting something that someone else has written, our voice isn't just about the technical instrument. It's sharing our identity, our intelligence, our soul, our feelings with other people. So it's a very vulnerable space for us to have the courage to step up and speak out, because we're not just using our voice, we're sharing ourselves with people. And I believe that's why it's often scary for people.
That's a very interesting and observational, my
Observant.
observant way. So then let me explore, why is it that every time I see you, meet you, speak to you, I just go, oh, Fiona, just talk to me. I don't know, is it the South African, the Irish, there's just something about your voice I find so beautifully soothing.
Thank you. I love when you say that. It's very kind. My only danger with it is that I don't need much encouragement to speak because I love to talk. So it's like, oh, stop. You're just encouraging me. And shutting up can be a challenge. But I think it's a combination of things. First of all, the voice is our voice and how we speak, and accent particularly is I call it our womb language, because if you think about it, it's what we heard in the womb. And when we're born, the people who cared for us used voices with accents to care for us. And so we grew up feeling loved in that voice, and it influenced the way we spoke. And as we become teenagers, we become more influenced by how our peers speak
Hmm.
and the country we live in. And that can all be the same thing. So to answer your question, with a name like O'Farrell, you've definitely got Irish connections. So I imagine some of it is an attraction from there. I don't know what your connection is with South Africa. You see, my voice to me sounds perfectly normal. I know it must be weird because I was born and raised in Ireland, 21. Then I spent 13 years in South Africa, which was my adult identity, was formed and shaped in South Africa. And I studied to become a speech and drama teacher there. And my drama teacher studied on the London stage, and she tried to encourage me to use RP English, which you'll find I'm now speaking in because I'm talking about it, which is a very neutral tone. But I think Irish is my womb language. South African English is my heart language.
Hmm.
So there's something in your heart and womb that is responding to that, I would imagine. What I would also like to think, Vicky, is that you're hearing gentleness and compassion in my voice.
Yes.
And that's because when I do what I do in terms of coaching and training, I've come across people who are experts who lord it over others with their expertise over the years in any industry. And they can be really impressive. And if their hoped for outcome is to impress and inform, they certainly achieve that. But my hoped for outcome is to enable and to empower and to instill confidence in my trainees or my coachees. And I don't want them to feel that this is something I'm good at and they're not. I want them to know that they too can be empowered and enabled to speak with confidence. And what I do, what I've done, what I've studied is not rocket science. It's just that if you don't know, you don't know. And if you think of my target audience, which is people in STEM and legal, they've studied science or engineering or accountancy or law, and they've worked with stuff and papers and computers, and they love that, and their strength and their power and their comfort zone resides there. But when they get promoted to leadership, they now need to communicate with people, to lead teams, to engage with an audience, to present, whether it's in a meeting or at a conference. And they are out of their comfort zone. They're back to 12 or 16 or 5 even. So up to the age of 5, if we're still alive, it's because we had enough body and voice to communicate to get what we needed. And sometimes I tell my clients, we're going to go back to the pre-5 posture and voice and curiosity, because a 3-year-old, what's their biggest question?
Why?
Why? And I tell them, ask me. If you don't understand why you're doing what you're doing, you're not going to retain it. So it's about regaining that confidence, that enthusiasm, that passion for engaging with people that little kids have, unless there's been trauma, obviously. So I can't remember if that answers your question. I can't even remember what the question was, but I hope that was helpful.
Menopause kicks in again. Yeah, no, it does. It does because I think about there are times when someone can walk into a room and just their voice can either make me like you. I just need to listen to your voice and I feel soothed and I feel calm and I feel gently and I feel at ease. But there are some people's voice that can come in and it can just jar. The minute they open their mouth, I'm just like, oh no. And I don't, that's volume, accent, um, tonality. Why does that happen to people?
That's a brilliant question. So just listening to you, I had a thought, and I don't have a statistic for this or a research source, but actually it was Patsy Rodenberg, who's the voice and speech coach at the Royal Guildhall. So I believe everything she says. She's my guru for voice and speech. A person can listen to a shouty voice for 90 seconds before they switch off. And you switch off because it's self-protection. So I believe the reason that you're shutting down or responding badly is because there's something in you that's saying, this isn't safe or this isn't good for me. So I imagine that that's exactly what's happening, in the same way that a person shouting at you or using volume instead of projection to engage or be heard by their audience is going to, people switch off because we're not designed to absorb that. Our self-protection mechanism kicks in and we shut down.
So,
And it may be a tone in a voice as well that's coming across. So for instance, if there was an arrogant tone, or if that person, if a woman stood up and she hated men, or a man stood up for or hated women, I think that might come through in their voice, in their tone, by the way they speak and the way other people react and respond to them.
So a little bit like the kind of our human instinct of the fight, flight or freeze, isn't it? It's actually that voice has come from somewhere deep within me that actually maybe as a child there was somebody that had a very deep voice around me that maybe that's why deep voice they don't I'm not saying deep
Yeah.
voices do jar. I'm using it as an example. Or it could be that actually somebody with a very high pitched voice as a child, and so again my subconscious is saying to me that's not safe, you need to switch off and move. Oh, that's fascinating to know. This is all, well, behaviors fascinate me, as you well know. But it's all of those things about what is it like to be on the receiving end of you. So actually, let
Yeah.
me ask you that question. What is it like to be on the receiving end of Fiona?
I'm not sure because I don't have never been on the receiving end of myself. But actually what you asked makes me think of the core basis of what I do, which is, and I think you've probably seen this. In fact, if you give me 2 seconds, I will grab a postcard. But the basis of what I do is, in any public speaking transaction, you've got a speaker, you've got a message, and you've got your audience. And when you're talking about connection, if a person is focused on themselves, either through self-consciousness or arrogance or lack of self-awareness, they're not connecting with their audience
Mm.
because they're connected with themselves and potentially their message, probably their message. If a person is all about their subject matter expertise, which is our comfort zone, that's wonderful, but that's cerebral and it doesn't connect us with our audience. So the absolute no fail way of engaging with your audience is put your audience first. From the time you're asked to speak, think about who are they, how do I want them to respond, and what will I do in order to bring out that response and that reaction. And so with that in mind, how do audiences experience me? In terms of my clients, I'm going to focus on, because a bigger, wider audience isn't something I can really tap into without being very general. But in terms of the reason people choose me to work with is they trust my expertise. I've been doing this for 25 years now, and it's built on a passion for people and their voices and their communication skills and enabling them. And I believe that comes through. I've been told, like you, that people like my voice. I'm sure that wouldn't be enough reason to hire me. But trust, I think people trust me because one of the things I do in a discovery call is I ask questions that help me to explore who they are and where they're coming from. So I guess I'm interested and curious. And then I help them establish outcomes. And then the reason it's called bespoken, apart from the pun, is that it's bespoke. The work I do is going to be bespoke for that group, for
Mm.
that individual, based on their outcomes. And we will work towards accomplishing those outcomes. I think something that's already also quite powerful about what I do that I don't see a lot of other people doing is I'm very positive. I work from a strengths-based perspective. So it's about, if you say you came to me, Vicky, and you go, oh, I do this, this, and this, and I want to sort it out, and this isn't happening, so I want to sort it out. I would help you first. I do a voice and speech profiling session where people are measured against 24 points of voice and speech. And honestly, for the most part, 2/3 of that is going to be where people are strong. And I will help you look at and focus on, you're good at this and this and this and this. So it's helping you see, yeah, I'm here because of a problem, but wow, I've got a really good, strong foundation of where I'm good and able and strong to build on.
Mm.
So you're not starting from here, you're starting from here, and then it's just what can you do to be even better? And
Yeah.
it's just celebrating who you are. And I would like to think that that's what I'm doing for people, is encouraging them, empowering them, enabling them. So
Yeah.
I hope people would find that in me.
So when you talk about the person delivering the message to the audience, and you've got the parts there, isn't it? It's not about you, and it's not just about your message. Actually, what it's more about is that the people that you're talking to, and this doesn't have to be standing on stage delivering to a huge audience. It could actually just even be in an interview situation. It's just about what is it like to be on the receiving end of you. So put yourself in the person's shoes, seat, whatever it is, of who you're delivering it to. Because I guess if you're delivering to somebody that maybe the person you're delivering to does have a loud, shouty, quite, or it might be deep voice, or it might be a high voice, would you mimic them to make sure your message lands with them?
No, never. I would always encourage people to show up as their authentic selves,
Hmm.
because you can't sustain, and people pick up. You can't sustain it first, because then what next time they hear you and there's a different audience, they hear you speaking in a deep voice or a quiet voice. So be authentic, but be fluid. So allow who your audience is shape how you show up. For instance, if you speak to a child versus a teenager versus an adult, even, you're going to show up differently. Not too differently, actually, because I remember my dad was amazing at speaking to my friends and they always loved him. And it's because he treated them like people, but he respected who they were. So it's about being fluid and allowing your shaping your message for what does your audience need to hear from you today, and what can you leave out? I think knowing what to leave out is probably one of, if you're a subject matter expert, is probably one of the biggest challenges. But then you're able to relax and enjoy, and your audience from the time you walk in will experience the fact that you've got them in mind, and
Mm.
it's about them, not about you, and it's about serving them.
Mm.
So yeah, if you were a waitress, you'd serve different tables in a different style and fashion depending on their needs, and it's just about adapting.
Mm. And I don't know, I don't think many people think about that in terms of, like you say, a subject matter expert wants to tell you everything about that subject matter. But if they're a very more reserved personality type, they might give you the detail and then wait to be questioned, ask that why before they offer more. And they'll pause because you're a great one for pausing.
Yes, yes. It's questions and pauses are beautiful, because questions are like, if you imagine your mind as a fertile field, questions are like a plow that turns over the soil of your mind to either discover that actually you have the answer, or to turn over the soil and create a space for new information to land beautifully. And then the pause, I love to quote my first drama teacher in South Africa, Joan Lee. She said, during the pause, the meaning goes on. And I think it was Claude Debussy who said, music is what happens between the notes. So
Mm.
if we don't allow time to think for the other party, and if we it's beautiful if we can learn to become comfortable with silence,
Mm.
which
Well,
isn't easy.
it isn't easy, especially for extroverts in this world because we find a pause very uncomfortable, and we generally have, if we've asked a question, if the other person is pausing and we don't realize it, we have a very, very bad habit of reframing and re-vomiting the question at them, which is a lot of the stuff that I talk about. So I loved that metaphor that you just used with the plough. That's beautiful. That
Thank
is
you.
really beautiful. I'm just looking at the time. We could talk for a long time just because I just love your voice. And for those who are listening, it will be in the show notes, all of Fiona's details, including her book. And she does have that on audio as well. So you can actually listen to her reading her own book, which is fabulous. As we come to the end of this one, then, Fiona, I'll leave you with one question for you to give to our audience, viewers, listeners. And what would be the one thing that you would like people to do as a result of listening to this episode about our voice?
Again, a very beautiful question. I think it would be to ask themselves, what does this mean for me? What lands with me? What one thing could I do differently now that would make a small change in terms of my impact in the world? Because I do believe that we all have potential, and we can write and we can stay in our comfort zone, but actually the biggest impact potential we have is if we can stand up and speak or step out and speak, even if it's on behalf of someone else who hasn't got a voice. So to quote the motto I had in my speech and drama studios and have taken on as Bespoken, it's for people to never underestimate the ability they have to enhance and influence the lives of others.
And that is a beautiful quote to finish this podcast on. Fiona, thank you so much for being my guest today. There is, for all of you listening and watching, in the show notes, every which way you can get hold of Fiona. She has got all of her details in there. But very quickly, what's the best way to get hold of you, Fiona?
It would be to book a call through my website. If you go to bespoken.org.uk, under the contact page, you can book a call. I offer a 30 to 40 minute discovery call to anyone who wants to talk or chat about their development and their voice and effective communication skills.
Fabulous. Bespoken.org.uk, and it is in the show notes. Thank you for listening and watching and being my guest, Fiona.
Thank you for inviting me. I really appreciate being here and spending time with you and your beautiful smile.
Thank you.
How has this conversation had an impact on you? What have you learnt? What will you do differently? Do leave a review on Apple or Spotify on It Starts With You podcast. And also leave a comment down below. Do also then connect with me on social media. I'm on Instagram, Facebook and LinkedIn. And why not even join the Facebook group It Starts With You and keep the learning ongoing. Thank you for listening.